That's something I've learned is that extraordinary self-care is one of the biggest secrets of success. You don't get to the top of the mountain by climbing all the time. Like you really do have to take the breaks.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, Ella Barnard.
Hello, everybody. This is Ella from Author Like a Boss, and I am here today with Sheri Fink. She is amazing, an inspirational speaker, a #1 best-selling, award-winning author, and co-creator of the Whimsical World inspirational brand. She creates books, products, and experiences that inspire and delight kids of all ages while planting seeds of self-esteem. All 5 of her children's books were #1 bestsellers, including The Little Rose, which was a #1 bestseller for over 60 weeks, became the #1 top-rated children's ebook on Amazon, and was adapted into a stage play. Oh my gosh,
Yay!
That's so fun. I think I need to, I have a, my mom is somebody I like to buy gifts for Mother's Day and etc. But she's hard to buy for, but she loves roses. And I like buying her sweet children's books because they always have a good message. Like they often have a really good message. And so it's like this sweet, good message children's book. So I think you might be on I hope she didn't listen to this. Maybe. Shoot.
Spoiler alert.
I know, spoiler alert. I think your book might be on the next, gift giving thing. So thank you so much for being here, Sheri.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm so excited to be here and to get to connect with you. I've been following you online and checking out your amazing academy and your podcast, and I'm really excited about what you're doing for authors.
Oh, thank you. Wow. Thank you. So let's jump into it. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your author journey. Like, how did you get from, what do I want to be when I grow up to where you are now?
Well, as all good things happen, serendipitously, I actually, when I was a kid, I started out wanting to be a number of things. I wanted to be a writer, a mother, a teacher, a mermaid, and a princess. And I've actually achieved, 3 of those goals so far, but maybe not the 3 that you think. But when I was a kid, I was always like playing and writing. And I think maybe the reason why I was creating my whimsical worlds then was because I grew up in rural Virginia. And even though my family, always had money for food on the table, we didn't have money for the other things that kids want, like new toys and trips and fancier clothes and, just any of those kinds of things, new books. And so the way that I dealt with that feeling of lack was I was always creating this imaginary world, and I was building all these little businesses from a very early age, and no one in my family was an entrepreneur. So they were always kind of like, what is wrong with this kid? Why can't you just play like a normal kid? And I was like, this is normal for me. Like, I don't know how to be any different, So, but about when I was like 11 or 12, my mom started talking to me about college. And no one in my family had ever gone. And she said that I would be the first, but I had to work really, really hard in school because I had to get a scholarship. And I didn't really understand what college was, but I understood how important it was to my mom. So I kind of put my creative endeavors to the side, and it's still been a part of me, but it was kind of dormant for a very long time while I got focused and, studied and did really well in school, ultimately went to college. I liked that so much, went back and got a master's degree and then later a business management certificate too, all while climbing the corporate ladder. And as a kid, I looked at people who were, doing the corporate thing as an outsider, like that was the goal, right? Like that would be like the pinnacle of success, to have this really sweet title and really good paycheck and have people respect and admire you and get to travel. And man, I climbed that ladder for 12 years. And I had invested everything in that identity. I mean, all of my education, all that time and energy. And when I got up to the top of that ladder, I realized it was against the wrong wall. And I had this like
Whoa.
horrible feeling of that I was wasting my time, but I was really good at what I did. So I was heavily rewarded, and there was no incentive for me to leave or to change anything except this like soul feeling where it felt like a piece of me was dying. And I didn't really know how to handle that because, I had everything that I supposedly wanted. And I didn't want to be ungrateful about it because I appreciated everything that I had gone through and achieved. But I was going through this soul searching. And during that time, I had a gift of adversity. And I don't know if you've ever had this, Ella, where something's not going the way you want and then something else happens and makes it completely worse.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You're like, oh no, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, and I'm looking back, I'm so grateful that it happened the way that it did, because I don't think I ever would have been open enough to go back to playing the way that I did in childhood and to create the life that I have today, which is so different than the corporate robot lifestyle that I had built before. So what happened to me was, while I was going through all this soul searching, I had a gift of adversity where this other woman in my office was bullying me. And it was really, really bad. And I just didn't know what to do. I'm a very cheerleader kind of person. Like I think there's enough for everyone, and I want everyone to be successful. And I'm genuinely surprised when people aren't. And so for this to be happening to me, I just didn't understand it and didn't know what to do. And I tried all the things. I read books. I talked to HR. I talked to my boss. I talked to the person. I did everything, and none of it worked. And so I was driving to work one day, and I didn't want to run away. I just didn't want that level of drama in my life, And as I was driving to work, I was thinking about it, and I was like, I worked way too hard to get where I'm at, to let one little person who's small-minded hold me back. And I'm not running away. I will not. So I got to fix this, but I don't know how. And I was crying, and I just had this moment of like complete surrender where I literally said, help me, I will do anything. And then this idea came to me, like right there in the car, about a rose that grows up in a weed bed, and because she's different, thinks she's the weed. And then it wrote through me in the car at stoplights on the way to work. Nothing like that had ever happened to me. Like when I was a kid, I was creating with my mind, which was a lot of fun. But this came like, it felt like it was
divine.
It almost, it poured through me, if that makes sense. Like it didn't feel like I had written it at all. I wasn't thinking. And I think that was the most beautiful gift, is that I got to this state of not thinking. And at the time I never meditated. I didn't really 100% know what that was. I didn't have any self-connection at that time. And this like shot it through me. And so I got a flavor of what that would be like. And I wrote the story down on the back of an envelope with a mini golf pencil, because that's what was in my car. And I got to work and I put it away, and I was like, well, that was interesting. I'm never going to tell anybody about that. Because at the time, I didn't know any creative people. I didn't know artists and authors and filmmakers and the people that I know now. I thought that was a totally bizarre experience and people were going to think I was nuts. So I put it away for more than a year. But I made a really important decision that day. And I think maybe some of your listeners can relate to this, or maybe they're getting ready to make this decision. But I decided 1 year from today, I will either be working somewhere else, doing something else, or working for myself. And that's the one I really, really wanted. But I didn't want to tell anybody because I didn't want them to know if I failed. So I drew that line in the sand. I prepared as much as I could. Like I saved up as much of my salary as I possibly could over that next year. I did everything I could to put myself in a good position. Like I call it an exit strategy. And then a year later, and keep in mind, I hadn't even pulled that story out of the drawer. I hadn't even thought about it again. Never showed it to anybody. A year later on that day, I remember sitting in my office and I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to be a woman of my word to myself? Because I keep it for everybody else. And I wrote up the letter and I gave it to my boss. He freaked out. The president of the company came in. Everybody was panicking. I gave them 2 weeks notice. They thought I was crazy. And I wasn't sure if I wasn't. Like, I was just like, had that feeling of complete elation and also complete terror at the same time. And, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew I needed to move on. So I left. And a week later, I had planned in advance, like I was going to a conference, and it was a success conference. And while I was there on the very first day, someone had a random conversation with me about writing. And I thought that was weird because I didn't consider myself to be a writer. And she said, "So tell me about your writing." And I was like, this is such a weird conversation. And I'm still like very self-protective because I had been in that bullying situation. And my solution for that at the time was not to shine. Dim your light. And of course, that's not the solution for anything. That doesn't help anyone. So I was like very, very, like my face was getting flushed. And I was like, I write business and marketing stuff for a company, and it's so boring. And she's like, no, you've got more. And then I remembered that story in a drawer. And I thought, well, I have this little story. And she said, tell me. And so I told her the story, and she said, you have to do something with that because my grandchildren need that message. And that's when the light bulb went on. And I thought, well, maybe it's a children's book. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And she kept introducing me to people as the woman working on a children's book. And at first I was like having all these awkward interactions where I was like, no, it's a misunderstanding. And then people would look confused and then disappointed and walk away. So the next day I decided, you know what? The next time someone says that to me, I'm just going to say yes. I don't know these people. They don't know.
Yeah.
What's the harm? So I started saying yes. And I had the most beautiful conversations with people, and they were really excited and supportive, and they didn't even know me. And people were like, wow, I need that message for my niece, or my sister's going through that at school, or, all these things. And I thought, maybe I could help kids so that they have the tools so that if it happens to them, whether they're a kid or an adult, it doesn't ruin their life the way I let this ruin mine. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was just like scary and juicy. And it was like every time I wake up, I get excited about the idea, and then I get afraid, and then I would get back in touch with the passion I had for helping other people. And then I would dwarf the fear, and I would take a little bit of action, a little bit of action, a little bit of action every single day. So by the time I got home from that conference, I was on fire. I was like, okay, how do you do a children's book? I have no idea. I don't even know any writers. So I reached out to my network that was pretty extensive because I had been in the corporate world for so long, and I'm a connector. So like if I know that you love something in particular and I know the creator of that, like my natural instinct is to say, oh my God, you guys should meet, and to connect you. And I never really asked for anything in return. So I had all these people that I had helped in the past, just because I wanted to. And then I went to them and said, hey, I want to create a children's book that helps kids with their self-esteem. Do you know anybody who has done something like that, or has written a book, or has illustrated a book, or, anybody who does anything? And people bent over backwards to introduce me to like third-degree connections that they had. And I would have calls with all these people, and I would say, I'd have 15 minutes, and I'd say, this is who I am. This is what I'm trying to accomplish based on, what you've accomplished, what worked, what didn't work, what would you do differently? And based on what I'm trying to do, who else do you think I should talk to, and would you introduce me? And I was so excited that I got to talk to these people. Like I would post on social media afterward about this person, like one of the people in their book or whatever they were passionate about in the moment. Like I got excited about it too. And I would talk about it on social media. And at the time I didn't have a huge following, but I have very loyal people, and they would comment on it and get excited about it too. And when my book finally came out 6 months later, which I understand is very fast. But at the time I didn't know anything. So for 6 months, 6 months, that's all I did, like was learn, take action, make mistakes, pick yourself up fast. And 6 months later, when it came out, I emailed each of those thought leaders that were so kind to talk to me and said, and of course I had thanked them before that too, but I said, oh my gosh, like I'm an author on Amazon now. I can hardly believe it. Thank you again. And I sent them the link. Well, unbeknownst to me, several of them had sent that out to their followers and celebrating, that a dream had come true. And within 2 weeks, my book was a #1 bestseller on Amazon. And I was so green. I had no idea what I was doing. I had to have somebody had to tell me that my book was #1 and that I needed to buy champagne because I didn't even know. And then the bigger miracle, I think, is that word of mouth carried that book to stay at #1 for over 60 weeks.
Wow.
Which now I have a huge appreciation for that because I have 8 books and not a single one has stayed at #1 that long since then.
Yeah.
So
you guys, 60 weeks, there's 52 weeks in a year. So
it's amazing. and so that changed my life. And then I had another idea. And before you knew it, like I was building a brand and people were contacting me about all kinds of things. And, all of these amazing things have happened because I was brave enough to write the inspiration down and then to revisit and pull it out of a drawer and share it with people. And I mean, my God, you never know what you have tucked in a drawer. Like my life is completely different. And every single thing that has happened for me, like that has been wonderful, has happened as a result of me pulling that story out of a drawer, including meeting the love of my life. And we just got married in December and he's an author too. And it's extraordinary what can happen when you play in that space of like passion and fear
Yes.
on a daily basis.
I am totally resonating with you right in this moment. Like this is where my life is right now. And it's magical and scary, but exciting. I feel, I have so many things that I want to touch on from what you've said, because I know a lot of people, a lot of women especially, had this, like when they were younger, this, we all have so many gifts, right? And when you're younger, you're like, oh, I could just be myself and share my gifts. And then I've had this vision for myself. I said, people throw mud on our light. And then people, as we're growing up, people throw mud and it shows up as like people's expectations or restrictions about who you're supposed to be or do or act in a certain way. And then we adopt it and it hardens into like this shell that we're living and walking through the world in, thinking it's our true identity. But we're like, this is miserable. This is so heavy. And this does not feel good. And I love that you had the gift of adversity. Because yes, I think I'm a little bit of a spiritual person. And I think that sometimes God or source or the universe, whoever knows that you have this gift to give and is like, I'm going to make this so unbearable for you that you have to do something else.
because I wouldn't have heard it any other way. Mm-hmm. I really wouldn't have. I mean, I had built that cocoon around me for so many years and I just couldn't see a way to leave. Like, what would people think?
Yeah. Well, because they all know you as this, by the time you're an adult, then your identity is this shell or cocoon or what have you, that's how they know you. So it's it's super, super scary, but so satisfying when you're like, oh, I'm just letting go of that. And I think women naturally, as they get older, they're like, oh, I don't have to, we have these 2 questions that we ask in people in the academy and in Author Like a Boss, which is what if you got to the end of your life without sharing your gifts? Okay. Like at the end of the life, will you have shared your gifts? And what if your gifts had the power to change the world? Like those 2 questions I think can be so powerful for women. So, sorry, Sheri has touched on something that I'm very passionate about for children and for women, especially. Like I was a teacher at one point because I love, anyways, going on. Like I'm very passionate about this. So now you do more than just write, but what are you doing? What do you do with your writing? Like, how does that happen in your life now? The writing
for the books?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. So, with the writing of the books, right now, the business has grown. Mm-hmm. So initially, it was quote unquote easier because all I needed to do was carve out time to write a book, and then I could focus completely on the publishing of that book and the marketing of it. And then I would, ride the wave as long as I could, and then I'd create a new one. Now, the business has grown. So it's not just about the books. It's also about speaking and empowering. And basically what I've done is think about what is my real mission? And that is to inspire and delight kids of all ages, including adults, while planting seeds of self-esteem that can have lifelong benefit. And I realized a few years ago that in order to have the impact that I really want to have, I need to reach more people faster, more than I can in just a children's book, right? So I started looking for more speaking engagements because in those scenarios, you can reach 100, 500, 1,000 people in one moment. And then if they want to, they can check out the books later and then take that message home with them. But the real alchemy of innovation happens in that moment when you're talking with them, when they feel connected to you, and you can really, it's amazing what happens. Like I didn't realize 8 years ago before I started that I had that opportunity. I didn't see that as a gift for me. I kind of shunned the speaking. So now I'm doing a lot more of that. And also we're doing a lot of live experiences for kids because we want to empower them. And when I say we, I'm talking about my husband and myself. Derek Taylor Kent is my husband. And we're growing our business so that we basically take both of our author backgrounds and created a bigger business and bigger empowerment message than we could have had alone. So a lot of my energy is going toward that these days. So it's quote unquote harder to carve out the time to write an actual book. But when I do it, and I'm about to do it again because I have another book that's slated for this year, I make the time, which is the hardest part, because I am not a turn an inspiration on and off, write for 15 minutes a day kind of person. I'm an all in, get into that room and milk it as long as you possibly can, right? Flow in that river as long as you can stay and hope for the best. So I have to create the time in my schedule, and then I have to eliminate all distractions, which is very, very hard because, with social media and everything else, you're a human on this planet, yes. You understand. And the other thing too is that now I have other deadlines because now I'm doing a lot more teaching and webinars, and I'm partnering with big name organizations to bring, these empowering messages to people. So I have deadlines beyond myself, like articles that I'm writing for magazines and things like that. So it's really figuring out what that window is going to look like, and then my production schedule. And I've learned a lot in that too. It used to take me a year to produce a book. But I found places within that I can shorten the time by choosing different partners who can accomplish it faster and still produce the quality of work. So my production calendar is shorter, but now we have more books. So
you didn't give yourself less work.
Yes, it's just grown. So it's exciting, but that first draft is so precious because without it, you don't move forward. And I recognize that within myself, and I'm constantly having conversations with myself about it because, again, even if you're an entrepreneurial author and you've created your own business, it's still really easy to put the wants and demands of other people ahead of your own. Even though you're serving people and you're doing a good job and you really want to do it. If I don't sit down and write that draft, that book is not going to come out.
Yeah.
So it's never an easy equation. It's a matter of prioritizing.
I love that you say making the time, because I think a lot of authors, a lot of people, right? Because there are so many distractions. A lot of people are like, I don't know how to find the time. And it is not a matter of finding the time. It's a matter of making the time. Have you ever had that? There's some author, I can't remember who, but doing what's urgent versus doing what's important.
Oh, yes. It's Stephen Covey.
Thank you.
Yes. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Yes.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, the urgent thing is the dishes, and the important thing is I need to write this book. So, and making the time and saying, even though these things do need to get done, this one thing that's important that will make long lasting difference in my life is worthy of bumping it up the priority ladder.
Yes. And I think as women, a lot of times we don't do those things because we haven't learned the right way to say no, because we want everybody to be happy in general. If we can help people, we want to help people. And women are the most giving souls. But the thing is, like, if you don't invest that time in bringing your dream to life, it will never happen. It's not going to just jump into your lap one day. And so for me, part of that was learning how to say no gracefully. So I'll give you one of my phrases, because I get a lot of opportunity, a lot of invitations personally and professionally. I'm very blessed. And sometimes the best thing is just to say no, and not just if you're sitting on the fence and you're hemming and hawing about whether you should do it or whether you shouldn't, you probably shouldn't. That's just the bottom line. Jack Canfield, the author of The Success Principles and Chicken Soup for the Soul, says, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And he's right, because we have a finite amount of time in a day and in a lifetime. And if we're investing energy doing things that don't bring us joy and fulfillment and move the needle, when are we going to do those things that matter? Yeah. So one of the things that I have learned is to say, I would love to, but it's just not possible. No apologies. I'm not sorry that I can't come. I've already got a commitment, I'd love to, but it's just not possible.
That's beautiful.
Or I appreciate the invitation, but I'm not going to be available to attend.
Yeah.
And now that I have that tool, I can just use that. And I think a lot of women, we just don't have the tools in the toolbox. Mm-hmm. And if someone gave them to us, we could have used them a long time ago, but never too late to start,
Yeah. And I think there's a mindset before you use the phrase, before you have that tool of being I am worthy and deserving of giving to myself as well as giving to other people. And then having the tool to say, I would love to, but it's not possible. Or I often say, I'm sorry, I have plans, and it's nobody's business what my plans are.
That's right. They could be taking a bubble bath. That's your business.
Yep. I'm I'm sorry, I've already got plans. And oftentimes my plans are doing the thing that's important, not the things that are urgent. But sometimes what's important is resting, taking a bubble bath, so that I can do more scary things, that are moving me towards my goal. And
that's a really valuable point, because that's another thing I've learned in the journey. Because at first I thought, I'm going to sprint all the time. I can do this. But that's not how it works. Think about professional athletes. They don't sprint all the time. They're in training, then they compete, they do the sprints, and then they recover. There's a cycle. It's a cycle that includes recovery. It's a valuable practice in recovery. And I think as a society, we really value the performance part, but not the practice and not the recovery. But they're all integral to real performance. And that's something I've had to learn. And it's in the gym, right? No one else knows if I go or not, but I know. If nobody's looking, does it matter? It should.
Yeah. I'm going to say this probably a million times during our call. I love what you just said.
Yay!
because I think, and tell me if you believe this is true, for authors and for just women who are being creative, but I think authors as well, there's in the space a very masculine kind of getting things done, crushing it, just amongst authors and entrepreneurs. And I think one thing I'm going to parentheses here is you guys, being an author is an entrepreneur. As soon as you start selling your books, you become an entrepreneur. Close parentheses. Okay. But I think there's this very masculine and energy and space and examples. And so as a woman, I have read a lot of entrepreneurial, a lot of marketing, and a lot of books and blogs and things, and been trying them to do them myself the way that they're done. And I'm I am just not a 25-year-old dude. I am just not. This is not working for me. And as I've gotten older and started actually taking action and been okay, you know what? It's okay for me to go and take the action and then go take a bath because I'm tired, and then go take more action. And you guys, everybody out there, you will only see the action taking.
Yes.
Like on the other side, you're just going to see this podcast interview. You're not going to see that I took a nap for an hour and a half before this podcast interview because I did another one earlier today and I'm tired. So like, you don't see that, but it's absolutely part of allowing me to be energetic and fully here and present.
Yeah. Which, that's such a great point too, because that's something I've learned is that extraordinary self-care is one of the biggest secrets of success. Ooh. You don't get to the top of the mountain by climbing all the time. Like you really do have to take the breaks and give back to yourself. Like when I started working out regularly, everything changed about me. Like I was already doing well in business, but then my energy level changed. I used to like give a 1-hour talk and then I would have to rest the rest of the day. Like I would be exhausted. Now I can literally go and do a 10-hour exhibit, like where I'm signing books the entire time, interacting with people, taking pictures, and then I can go out to dinner with people afterward. Like, and then rest the next day. But it didn't used to be that way. It's like I had to build it, and it happened because of rest, and self-care. And, if you're on camera all the time and you're self-conscious about your hands, invest in getting your nails done. It doesn't have to be a super fancy place. Just get it done, so that way you don't have that self-consciousness. If it makes you feel good to have your hair done before you have a photo shoot, I highly recommend doing it. Save up the money and do whatever you got to do. But do what it takes to put you in the best position to be successful in that environment.
Oh my gosh. I really want you to say that. I don't think that's something that gets said very often, you guys. Self-care is one of the most important things you can do for success.
Yes. And I'm not talking about basic self-care, like going to sleep. I'm talking about like honoring your body and going to the gym and, taking a nature walk and spending time with your best friend and all of those things that seem like luxuries, especially now in our society where we're so connected but disconnected. Like those things are so precious. And you're going to show up a totally different person after you've had a rest and a bubble bath and your nails done. Like it's just, and here's the other thing. And I was really amazed to discover this because I grew up in a home with a single mom and she did it all. Like she was so hardworking and she raised me and my sister and, she struggled and she was all about giving all the time. Right. So she's completely depleted. And when I started reading about it, like looking at the masculine versus the feminine, I was shocked to discover that masculine energy is giving and feminine energy is receiving. And when I started looking at that puzzle in my own life, I was like, whoa, I'm way out of balance too, because my role model was, So I think we need to receive from ourselves. We need to receive from everyone else. Like if someone offers to help, like I used to be like, no, I don't need help. Now I'm like, wait a second, actually, maybe I could use some help on this. It would be great. And receiving that. And a lot of women that I've met too, like I was at the Tucson Festival of Books last weekend, I guess. We did a 2 or 3 day thing where we were signing books at the festival and it was so much fun. And it was bananas. We were so busy. At one point, there was a line in front of me and one line in front of my husband, and people were just coming up and pointing at titles and handing us money. Like it was just so busy. But there was this teenage girl who came by, and she had rainbow streaked hair. And if you guys know anything about me, I love colorful hair. And I was like, hey, I like your hair. And she came over and she talked to us for a minute, and she left. She came back later with her family, and she says, I just had to bring my family back here because you were the only booth in the entire festival that welcomed me and my teenage friends over. And you guys sell children's books. And
wow.
I was like, wow, that is just really surprising, but she was open to receiving. And what if she hadn't been? What if she had that, wall up because other people had been rude to them or whatever, had not acknowledged them? She wouldn't have received it. Now she's like friends with me on Instagram, and I posted something about my husband and our business and having a unicorn at our wedding, which is a true story. People told me like my big vision for my life was not possible. For years, people told me I was living in a fantasy world, and I chose to stay there. And now I'm living that fantasy. And she wrote like relationship goals and tagged her boyfriend on it. So like, if she had been open to receiving, You know what I mean? Like, it's such a small moment, but it's everything.
Well,
so I think we have to remember that as women, like to when someone gives you a compliment, receive it. Don't deflect it. Don't compliment them back. Just receive it. Feel that goodness come through you. Don't rely on it, but receive it when you do get it.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yes. Yes. I'm 100% behind everything that she's saying. And you don't have to apologize so much either.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I was with a group of authors a few years ago, and we were in a really fancy hotel. We were taking a selfie, and this man comes by, and we're standing, in half of the walkway, just half. And you could walk around us, no problem. And we're taking a selfie. And one of my friends instantly sees a man coming and says, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And then moves way out of the way. And I said to her, I was like, "What were you doing that you're so sorry about?" And she's like, "I don't know." And I was like, "Because you took up like a little bit of space." I mean, look how men go to the movies together. Do you see that? They put a whole seat between each other.
For their legs to spread out, okay?
They are not worried about taking up space. They don't even have the purses to carry that we've got, and they're spreading out, So I was just like, I'm never, ever going to apologize for taking up space again.
Yeah.
Even though I've been socialized, just like all the other women on this planet, to do so. Like, you're right. It's not you. It's okay to be here, to exist, to be exactly who you are. And if that's inconvenient for somebody else, well, then they'll deal with it.
Oh my gosh. So lovely. Can you talk a little more about, cause you definitely shared, and I'm going like way back to the beginning, but I think it's related to what we're talking about now. It's making me think of, when you were taking the action, when you were that nervous, like the scared but excited, this feeling, and when you were making those choices, can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of the people that are listening to this are like maybe right before that. Like right before that. And I might share, because I have had the gift of adversity. Did you say that? The gift of adversity. Mm-hmm. I have had that gift. It's, I was working, I'm just going to share a little bit, you guys. I was working at a very small company, and I was the assistant to the VP of sales, but there was only us in the sales department, just him and me. And when you're the assistant to the VP of sales, how much of the work you actually do versus the actual VP of sales. So it was a difficult job, and I was already not enjoying it, already looking for another job. I had applied to various jobs, and he'd given me a bad reference to one of them when I was about to, like, it was just yucky. And so I was in that adversity, like uncomfortable, but it was paying for me, and And then he quit, and I applied for his job, and the owner did not give it to me, but then he didn't hire anybody to place him. Mm. So then I was just doing both jobs, and he's like, "Well, it's working." And I'm like, "I know it's working." Because I'm doing
You're working.
But that was the gift of adversity, was like, okay, I cannot do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And I had a moment kind of like you, where I was like, how can I do this differently? Like, how could I have the time that I need? I just need help. And it was like angels whispered in my ear all of a sudden. Like, all of a sudden I had this idea. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sublet my apartment. I'm going to quit my job, sublet my apartment, go live on a farm for a few months. Like, it was just like, bam, the answer. But I think a lot of women, and since then, I met the love of my life. Okay. So I've started this business. And so I know, but I think a lot of women are in that just uncomfortable space. And all the things that we've been talking about, like the setting of the boundaries and being able to say no and self-care, all those things kind of come together. Do you have any more stories of you or other people that you know who have made that transition of like, what I'm doing is important enough to prioritize?
Yes. I mean, wow. First of all, thank you for sharing your story, because I know that almost every single person who's listening has been in that position before, where they're undervalued in some way, shape, or form by someone who benefits from all of their work. That's painful. And I'm really glad that it opened you up to a plan and action.
Yes.
Because look at where you are now.
I know.
How exciting. Changing lives every day. That's so cool. But I think the secret, if I could tell you the secret, is that it never really goes away, right? Like, I still feel scared and excited every single day. And that's because I'm constantly stretching myself onto another, like a bigger stage and a bigger opportunity and the opportunity to have a bigger impact. You know, it's not really a matter of getting rid of it. It's a matter of embracing it and increasing your tolerance, you know? So for me, you know, my goal now is to not be so closed off to myself and the universe that I need to be hit over the head with something to hear it. You know, like, I think, like you said, the self-care and the boundaries are important. And then also the standards, because that is something that was lacking in my life years ago, is that, you know, if somebody wanted to be my friend, I'd be like, oh, okay, we're friends. There was like no criteria whatsoever. Oh, you're my friend? Okay, good. We're friends. And what I realized, and I continue to grow in this area too, is that not everybody's meant to stay in your inner circle. And that's okay. You have to be okay letting things go. It's not just letting go of other people's expectations, but it's letting go of your own expectations of what you thought something would look like when it obviously isn't that anymore. If it's not a fit, gracefully let it go. And that will reduce the weight of most of the fear. Because when you have such a clear vision for what you want, like, I know that when I wake up and I do my job, like just one day of my job, kids believe in themselves. They make different decisions about who they are in this world and what's possible for them. That flourishes, that has a ripple effect out into the world. If I'm just feeling lazy and like feeling sorry for myself, that seed doesn't get planted or nurtured. That's an important job, right? So my vision is so important. It's like, what if the firefighter just decided, I'm not fighting fires today, and then a whole neighborhood burned down, right? Like, that's not cool. So I'm not so self-indulgent to think that that it doesn't matter. You know, I think it matters. I think everything matters. The way you treat the person walking down the street matters. All of it. So get out there and make the difference that you're meant to have. Get clear about just what you want to feel. Like, it doesn't have to be like, be honest with you, I don't know what my business looks like 5 years from now or 10 years from now. I think it's going to be beyond my imagination. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to have a vision and a plan. You know, so what I like to do now, I used to be very goal oriented, very head oriented, and that might work for you. That's a very masculine way to be. If you want to be that way, that's cool. I appreciate our differences, you know, but what's happened for me in the last few years is I've transitioned more from, I've got to have this achievement by this date at this time, and blah, 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 to, I want to feel the most joyful feeling that I can feel. What can I do in my life that's going to create that? What moves the needle for me? And what I did was I did this passion test, and you can look that up online. Janet Atwood created it. And you can test your like activities, like if you have ideas for 5 different books, or if you have a book idea and you also have children and you also love to play golf or whatever it is, you can test all these things and get a reading on what's most important to you in this moment. And it's really valuable. I won't waste more time talking about it. But what I did by doing this passion test is I discerned what my top 5 values are. So this is how it helps me make decisions and get clarity about who I am and who I want to be in this world, right? So my number 1 is love and connection. So that's self-care, self-love, my relationship, connection to friends, fans, family, all of that. That's my number 1 value. Then I have lifestyle freedom and business success. So that's where my business lives, right? Like I want to create influence, impact, income, because that's going to enable me to do more. Then I have, oh my gosh, I can't think of the third one. Oh, fitness and well-being. which is perfect because I haven't been to the gym yet today. I'm going after this interview. I'm already dressed. So I've been dressed for it all day long, but things happen. The important thing is that you go, not when.
Self-care, keeping your commitments to yourself.
Right.
You guys, look at this is self-care and keeping your commitments to yourself, integrity in your word to yourself in action right now.
Thank you. Now, I'm definitely going to go now. I just told all these people. So, and then after that, I have fun travel and adventure because I'm a person who loves to have experiences and I have to have something like fun to look forward to on the calendar at all times. So, and I love creating these once in a lifetime magical experiences for people that I love. So that's super fun for me. So I have to put that on there. And then contribution and legacy. So that's the difference that I make. Like whether it's through my business or personally or giving contributions to a nonprofit that matters to me, all those things matter. So when I get an opportunity or an invitation, I look at my values and I used to literally look at them, but now it's ingrained in me. I don't even have to look at a list to know what they are. And I would say, okay, does it check the box in any of these categories? Because if it checks all of them, then it's probably a hell yes.
Mm-hmm.
If it's half, and I'm super booked up doing things that check all, then it's probably a no thank you for now. And then if it doesn't check any of those boxes, that's an easy no thanks. So I think that's a really powerful way to help women and everyone really get clarity on what matters. And then it's easier to make decisions about who your friends should be when that happens. Like, I just don't have time for people who sit around complaining. I used to try to make time and empathize and help them. And I just don't have the patience anymore because I'd rather be creating something or be with people who inspire and lift others. Like, there's just my energy, like when I feel, because I'm more in touch with my body and myself now. And I feel like I love what I'm doing so much. I'm in this high vibration. It's much easier for me to tell when someone's not the best for me. And it's not a judgment. It's not like they're a bad person or anything. It's just like, wow, our energies just don't mesh the way that I would like them to spend more time together. And I don't say that to them. I'm not rude about it. I just, when they invite me to things, I just say I'd love to, but it's just not possible. And I keep moving forward. I don't look backwards.
Yeah. There's so much because women we're very complex people. So there was a number of things that I wanted to touch on and you guys, and I know this has not been as much about like writing and marketing but this has been all about mindset. Okay, which is everything behind the writing and marketing. Because I know, like, it's actually the tools of being able to post something on Facebook are not that complex. It's the mindset behind being willing to post something on Facebook about your book or about, like, it's the mindset that's the hardest part. The rest of it is not that difficult. We all know how to post on Facebook. So I want to touch on a couple of things. The giving in terms, I think when you're spending time with people that are not fueling you, you are giving and it feels good to be needed. Like there's something, your ego is fed by being needed by people in your life.
Yeah, it's a trap.
It's a trap. It's a trap. And so I want to connect I've done a lot of self-helpy stuff, you guys. So as women, we have like a finite bucket of energy that we can either be doing something that fills our energy, like gives us more energy, and that's self-care. And the self-care is getting enough sleep, eating healthy, the playful experiences, going out with your girlfriends. For me, pedicures is absolutely one of my things that feeds,
love it,
that gives me fuel, and it gives it for a long time because every time I look at my toes, I'm like, they're so cute, and there's some more fuel. Okay, so but it's different per person. But like sleep and food, healthy food, and those are some core. But then when you've made that commitment to yourself to be like, I'm going to take care of myself so that I can do this dream. Another way of self-care is limiting exposure to people who are not helping you fill your bucket up like with the energy to keep moving forward towards your dream. That's a different kind of, we tend to be so generous and so giving and self-sacrificing, and obviously self-sacrificing of your time and energy is the opposite of self-care. Like if it
Yes.
feels self-sacrificing, it's not self-care.
Yeah, it's so true. And you don't have to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the biggest realization, was like, oh, I don't have to say yes to everyone. Like, I don't owe anybody anything. Like, I earned my spot here. I will not apologize for it. I'm happy to radiate and share. But if it's getting like the energy isn't right, then that's okay. I don't even have to explain it to myself. Like my best friend said once, he said, if you ever find, this is back when I was dating, he said, if you sit down to a table and you recognize even 5 minutes later that without a doubt you are sitting across the table from mediocrity, you politely excuse yourself and get up and leave, because your time is so precious. And if they don't recognize that they're sitting across the table from a unicorn, get out of there. What are you doing? Like, don't waste it. It's not your job to convert them, to convince them, and save them. Just go do your thing. The right people will find you. And he was so right. He was so right.
Did you learn that lesson immediately?
No. I'm still learning it. Are you kidding me? I'm still a human being. I think we teach what we most need to learn. And I am very blessed to teach a lot of things that I'm still learning. Like, I'm getting better and better and better at it. But, it's really exposure and practice and having friends who can see it more clearly than you. Right. So if I am not sure, if I'm like, my gut feels this way, but I'm not sure. Like, I have friends I'll call on and they'll say, hey, let me tell you a story and you tell me what you think. And these people, they've known me for years. They've seen me build this mountain. They've seen me climb it. They're watching me build the rocket that's going to launch off the top of it. They have my best interests at heart, and I don't put their opinion above mine, but I'll gut check it, and say, what do you think? And most of the time they'll be like, you already know what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's in alignment with what I believe, So, there's no, and the goal isn't perfection for me either. It's just, how can I create more joyful states for myself and for other people? And like, I never want to be in a conversation where I'm not elevating it in some way. And
I love that. Are you okay? Go ahead.
Go for it.
I love, because I think what I like to do is marry new concepts to things that people have already thought before. And you're like, oh, that does make sense. So like, if you guys have ever been to if you've ever like got what I want to do with my home is I bought this home and I want to elevate it to another state, but it could be just like cleaning. Let's say you're like, you go into a room and you're like, okay, what I want to do or decorating or whatever. You're like, okay, all I want to do is make this room a little bit nicer. Like by my having been in there. And I think a lot of women know how to elevate a room with cleaning or with decorating or with, like that's something that's very familiar to us. And so if you take that next level and say you're just doing the same thing, but with the people in your life, with your intentions and your everyday, with your dreams and goals, and saying, oh, I just want to, my overall, instead of just in this room, in my life.
Yes. And that you're worthy of it.
Yes.
I think Jim Rohn said originally that you become the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Mm-hmm. It's been said a lot of times since then.
And it's not just in person, that's online too. And if you think about the 5 people you spend the most time with and you start getting worried, that's something to think about,
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about being against other people or them not being good enough or the room not being good enough. It's about you wanting to create an environment and create the space for the magic you want to put out into the world. And you can't, like, if you want to be a chef, but your kitchen is full of dirty, old, rusted pots and pans, and your counters are fully covered with, so much junk that you can't even use the equipment in there, that's not going to support your dream. You got to clear out that muck. And we all have it. It's like not just physical, but psychological and emotional muck that you have to get out of the way so that you have this nice, clean, pristine, crisp, like equipment and space to create these amazing meals that you want to serve. It's the same exact thing in your business, in your home, in your relationships. And it doesn't have to be full of drama. What I found is as you get really focused on what you want and creating that vibration that you want to experience, and that means energy, positive energy, and you're doing the things that you love, and you're having fun, and you're meeting the people that are inspiring you, and maybe you have that great dream relationship now, or you're on your way, or whatever. What ends up happening is the people who no longer fit magically start to disappear.
It's naturally and magically. You don't have to worry about it because you're so full of, their vibrations don't match anymore.
Exactly.
They don't match anymore. It goes away. Yeah.
And it's okay to feel sad about that. Like if that was a friendship or whatever it was, but it will happen. And it seems to happen in ripples. Like when you get to another level and another level, like don't be afraid of it. Just welcome that something is changing. And we're all like, I remember when I was researching for the little seahorse, and this just fascinated me. So I got to go to these aquariums, and I would get an animal husbandry expert to assign to me for the day. And they would walk around and they would talk to me about the seahorses, but I would also ask questions about all these other animals, right? And one of the aquariums I went in had this enormous lobster. I mean, it was the biggest lobster I've ever seen in my life. It looked like it would weigh more than a small car.
Whoa.
It was insane. It's like a smart car sized lobster.
Oh my gosh.
And I was walking by and I was like, what is that? And they're like, that's a lobster. And I was like, no. And then I started thinking about it and I was like, how do lobsters grow? And they told me that they molt, which means that as they get bigger, their shell pops off and they're all soft and squishy. And then they grow new pieces of the shell. And they hide. They usually go into hibernation. They like hiding for like 3-4 months until their shell's strong enough for them to be back in public again. Because in the meantime, when they're molting, they're all gross. Like they're squishy, they're vulnerable. Like the predators could get them very easily. And I was like, God, that's so fascinating because we are molting all the time. And some of us are embracing it and most of us are hiding it. Right? So either you're like, think about all the times you could be molting, like any changes happening in your life. You're moving, you're changing careers, you're getting curvier, you're losing weight, you are making a new friend, a parent passes away, like all these things. We're always all molting in some way. But when you pretend that you're not, you rob people of that connection, that possibility of being human with you. And it's so nice just to be soft and squishy out in the open. Yes, it's scary. But all the other soft and squishy lobsters find you then. And then you have a tribe, But if you're pretending that old shell fits you, people can tell you're carrying it around. It does not fit you anymore. You have to be open to becoming this bigger, more beautiful, stronger version of yourself. And if you're around people who want you to stay that tiny little lobster, you got to think about it. Like, would they really love me if they want me to hold on to this old shell for so long that it deprives me of the sustenance I need to be who I'm meant to be? Like, is that love? No, it's not. And it's not self-love to hold yourself back either. So get around people who are comfortable being naked lobsters. And
I think you just discovered the mascot for the Academy, Naked Lobster. We're all getting naked lobster shirts, you guys.
You gotta look them up. They're gross. Like it's the weirdest thing. It's so interesting. But you can see like the parallel, right? Like,
oh yeah,
everyone's molting at all times in some way or shape or another. And sometimes it's just one little piece of the shell, and sometimes it's all of it at one time with no warning. It's just gone. So I think embracing opportunities to connect with other molting lobsters and people who are open about it, it makes whatever you're doing that much more fulfilling. And it's also the place you want to write from. So getting back to the writing and the speaking, it's like, that's the place where people will cry when you speak. And they'll tell you afterward, I don't know why I'm crying, but 90% of the room will be crying. And it's okay. And sometimes you'll cry too on stage. And that used to terrify me, but now I just embrace it. And people are just like, it shows your heart and they can connect to you better.
Mm-hmm. I think everybody, if you haven't, Brene Brown talks a lot about this vulnerability, but I've known for a very long, because I moved around a lot growing up. And so I had to make friends very quickly. And being vulnerable, being willing to be vulnerable, it calls out. Like when you show your heart, it is almost impossible for any normal, reasonable human being to not share their heart back. Like it's so hard, and it's the most beautiful thing. And I think it's the thing that will transform the world when we all allow ourselves to be vulnerable and give our gifts from that space of vulnerability.
Yeah. Well, and when you are strong enough to stand in your vulnerability and not depend on anybody else's opinion of it, that is a magical day. Yeah. I used to care so much what people thought when I spoke. Like I like needed their validation afterward to know how I did. Like, it's like I wasn't even there. Like I didn't know how I did, you know, even though I was the one doing it. Mm-hmm. And I remember the day it was the biggest one I had done at the time. It was 500 women, business women, leaders, and in my local community in Los Angeles. And I remember like being overwhelmed by the number of people coming up afterward, and they were all crying and they're hugging me and they're telling me their stories and how amazing it was. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is interesting because I appreciate it, but I no longer needed it to nourish me. And I was so grateful for that realization. I was like, wow, I feel like somehow after doing this for so many years and so many people, like I've somehow reached another level, I guess, like where I can go and give it my all and be happy knowing I gave it my all without the validation that comes back. But I still appreciate it very much. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But it's like, it's really liberating to not need it. And like now, like when I do my social media posts, I used to be like, what do people want to hear? Now I'm like, what do I want to share? And whether people like it or not, like, of course I care, like people, if it moves people or whatever, but I'm not posting it just for that. I'm posting it for me because it's the way that I'm feeling in that moment. It's the joy that I want to share with the world. I found something cool and I want everybody to know about it, you know, and I share from that place, and I don't have attachment as to how many people like it or comment or, you know, like I said, I appreciate when they do, but I put it out there because I want it there, mm-hmm. not for somebody else.
Yeah. There's a very powerful energy. I'm just going to, this one thing and then we'll wrap up. But I think for a lot of women, when it comes to selling, there's a real barrier around selling. And I think it's actually very related to what you're talking about. This willingness to put yourself out there and not be attached to the result opens up a really beautiful space of and it has to do with confidence and practice and being able to be uncomfortable, where you're willing to put out what it is that you have to offer and be like, it's okay, whatever response I get, because when you're selling, if you have an attachment to the result, people can feel that and are mm-hmm. less willing to purchase.
It's true.
Like there's mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I think you're right. And I don't like the way that I look at it is not about selling, even though I guess technically that's what you're doing. Like I look at it as connecting. Mm-hmm. Like I love connecting with my fans. And when I think of it that way, I'm excited to go and talk to them. Like I want to hear their stories. I want to know how I can help. Like, you know, all those things. If I think about it, like I'm going to go sell to people today, that sounds terrible. Like I just, mm-hmm. It's a reframe in your mind about how you're handling it. Like, because when I'm connecting to people, I'm focused on the dream that they have and the difference they can make in the world. I'm not focused on my book. Like I have a lot of them. Like I'm not like, it's not about that. But what ends up happening is that when people fall in love with you as a human being, as a molting, loving, beautiful, vulnerable, imperfect human being, is they want to support you in the world and they want to take a piece of that with them in the best way and share that with other people. And a book is one of the many ways they can. So I think if you reframe it in your mind from a selling, and even like you can watch different Facebook, but like there are people who do the selling stuff all the time on Facebook, and it just looks uncomfortable, and you can tell it's not working, and it's like about funnels and like conversion rates and mm-hmm. Like I came from marketing. I came from that world. I choose not to play there anymore. Like I want to make a difference. I want to help you make a difference. Like I want every child that reads that book to feel a difference. Like that's what it's about. And if you can inspire people to take action from that place, it's much more powerful and you have a lot less attachment to it.
Mm-hmm. You guys, that's some of the best sales and marketing advice, especially for women, that you will ever get, is connecting with people who happen to be your fans who want to support you because they love you.
Yeah. And the only way they'll fall in love with you is if you're your authentic self consistently and you share your heart. That's the only way they can fall in love with you.
Oh my gosh. Which is scary, but so worthwhile. Okay. So,
yes.
If you have one last piece of advice that you'd want to give to people who to be successful authors or whatever it is, because you have obviously, I think what we've talked about is pretty universal for women, especially for success, whatever creative pursuits they have. And then if you tell us about yourself and where people can find you.
Okay. So my last piece of advice for the show is, don't let other people's limitations limit you, because nobody knows what you're capable of. I mean, you don't even know what you're capable of until you try. Go for what you really want in life, because you just might get it, and it could be even better than your wildest dreams. It will be worth it. And then you can find me online. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Sheri_Fink, and that's SHERI_FINK. I'm on Facebook at Sheri Fink Fan, and I'm on LinkedIn at Sheri Fink. And I think that's all my places.
Yeah.
Oh, my website. You can find me on my website. I'm also a mermaid on the website. So if you like mermaids, you can check that out at www.sherifink.com. And of course, my books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and children's boutiques and bookstores throughout North America. And I would love to connect with you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sheri. Thank you everybody here for being here and listening here on authorlikeaboss.com. Hugs and happy authoring.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.